Hello and welcome to LaunchLeft Podcast. I'm your host, Rain Phoenix. Today's very special guest is Kristin Hersh of Throwing Muses, and she'll be launching Wallace False. Don't forget to rate and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft. Hi, Kristin. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you. I've been a fan for so long of your music and just the way you are in the world and how you are as an artist. And I was thinking today, obviously, the new Throwing Muses album is incredible.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart.
Really.
Listen.
I love it. And
really?
Yeah, it's wonderful. And of course, like in 1994, when you released Hips and Makers, I was looking today at the date and it was January. So it was just after my brother passed. And I was thinking how meaningful that record was to me at that time. And I think it was Michael, our mutual friend, Michael Stipe, who introduced me to it. Obviously, he sang the first track, but specifically that song, Teeth, is just really, really influential and so important for me. But
that's very kind of you. I am confused by that song, and I think for the same reason it hurts a little. You would think that I would be used to that because other people seem to hurt when they listen to my stuff, but I don't. I feel nothing in a good way. I relive, so I'm just lost. And Teeth, I see it on the set list sometimes, and I think. So I appreciate it. You had to bring something to that song. Thank you.
Yeah, that lyric, you're so tall, it's like I climbed a waterfall, and the way you put it to melody, I just remember that standing out always, something that I've like thought about just randomly. That
Really?
Yeah.
That's so kind of you. I will take that. I feel like I've had a lot of trouble even wanting to release songs. I would just play if that was a thing, but it's not. You have to let other people hear it. And gradually over the years, I've realized I'm going to keep accepting when a smart person gets it, when they let it resonate. I'm going to start carrying that, and that will make me a more brave, shy person. So thank you.
I know what you mean. And that's part of, I think what's so inspiring about you as an artist is you so clearly do it from a place of just passion to make these pieces, but you don't seem to have that. It's inspiring to me because you don't seem to have that kind of yearning that it has to be seen or heard or, like if anything, that's painful, that part.
We used to look out at the crowd from the dressing room and think, what is wrong with you people? Even though we were compelled to play this way, we found it to be very unlikable. And honestly, I still do think what we did then was pretty unlikable. I don't like it. But I can't do the math in any other way. If you don't let anybody hear it, you can't do it again. And that's where I get my humility. It's so inappropriate for me to even understand that they can see me. They kept yelling at me at Warner Brothers, be attractive. And I'm thinking, this is sound. Weren't we talking about music a minute ago? And they're like, no. We weren't. We're never talking about music.
Right. That whole image piece of it. Do you think that there has been forward motion in regard to that with the quote unquote industry, or do you feel still that is the prevalent driver of how artists are, pushed out to listeners? Is it image based in some ways still to this day, or do you think anything has changed? I'm so curious.
I hope it has changed in the splintering of the entire entertainment industry and what we would call our culture here in America, to split it off from an attention economy and make it more human. And the normalize everything thrust means that at least we can increase the images we're allowed to put out there, and hopefully pretty will go away and we'll be left with beautiful and ugly and everything. because that would be truth. That would be the radical acceptance that music always engages in. My issue was more, well, yeah, that was a big issue. You're right. I had no idea they would even call me female. I thought I was a musician and was. Even more than that, I was a songwriter. So I was obsessed with these pregnancies just over and over and over and over again. Every song is like a pregnancy, this life that must live, and you want to keep it safe because you remember the energetic that it was before it had a sound body, and you're trying to serve that. And when someone comes out and says, oh, that should be a whore and you should be a bigger whore, I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Why are these the people that are in charge of making sound a gift?
Mm.
And so I left. I just thought, I don't belong here. I'm never going to turn my back on women. I'm never going to turn my back on music. I don't even know how. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play my own game, which is just music that is not pretty. And I play it for people who don't want me to lie. And pretty is always a lie is always pretty. They go together. And I am more enchanted by the visceral, and these people seem to carry that into the room. And I had Warner Brothers buy me the audience that is bought with marketing. And I don't want to insult people because I do love humanity, but the people who are subject to marketing, the chicks and dicks, they were not interested in the visceral or truth because it's not pretty. And they would come to the shows and they would yell woo. And I would think, y'all are at a party and I'm not. I'm at a different party, and it doesn't scream woo. And so I just left, and I go to this different party all over the world, and that's where I belong. That's the landscape that leads to more music, not the one that said, we want you to, be this, we're going to buy you fame and then disappear you. I just wasn't interested in that. I don't want to be looked at. I'm a mammal. I find it threatening.
Wow. Well, I think it's a really interesting distinction between pretty and beautiful, because I do find your music beautiful. And at the same time, that was really interesting to hear you talk about, pretty is a lie and a lie is pretty, and that distinction. And I do think that it's wild what one adjective can do to change how you feel about something. I just thought that was really, really
It's true. The modifiers we choose will send us in a direction, and we probably have a zeitgeistian impulse to be part of a flock of birds, no matter how shy we are. And we've lost touch with where our flock is going if we're going to be directed by something that is essentially competitive, the lobster tank that we would call art and entertainment, and possibly attention economy itself, commerce itself. So if you're in this flock of birds with love, you're not going to fly in that direction, and you can find yourself lonely. But all of these lonely birds we realize, oh no, we're actually going in this visceral direction, and that's where true zeitgeist would lie, not top down. I want to say fashion because it's completely opposed to music, and it's what the industry has absorbed as music. We differ in our definitions of what music is. I think they sell product. That music would have a spiritual component, and fashion is just top down. Right, it's of this moment because planned obsolescence is their sort of televangelism business model. It's got to be big, and I'm sure there are people in a televangelist audience who carry spirituality into the room and project it on to their space. It's their life. It's up to them to do that. But having seen those who lie from the stages up close, I wish better for everyone. I wish better for them. I wish better for the audience. And so, yeah, as you say, those modifiers, it's important, or we won't, we'll just fall out of the sky. The special people die. Like, I die all the time on the internet. Friends send me these very beautiful videos that people keep making in case I finally die. But I'm just in that group of people who should be dead by now. And I have to say, I don't find what I do to be painful. I think this is a party. It's just, well, it's a beautiful party. It's and an ugly one. It's not a pretty one.
Yeah, and you touched upon, something that to me resonates is really true, which is the spirituality in music, and how being connected to source, like a lot of the times artists that I really feel something for, I get the sense that they, got beamed the information, and they tend to be more humble and more, interested in just being a vessel, a kind of antenna. And it's an inspiration to me because I aspire to that. It's such a struggle all the time between the binary of what the world expects you to be as an artist and that kind of channel part that where you don't claim it as yours. It's just like, came through me, here you go, I hope it helps. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, oh, is it working? Do they like me? Is it, that
thing that like being like this is like the tap dance. It's like, oh my goodness, I know the song before it becomes a sound, and I wouldn't insult it with that tap dance. But why isn't that a familiar concept to people? Although I will say that even when I was a teenager, and I started my first band when I was 12, I want to say, we were literally children when we were playing in bars. We weren't allowed to be in the clubs for like another decade. But people even then said, you're channeling. And I thought they meant you're probably the kind of hippie chick that says she's channeling. And I wasn't. Yeah, I was an immunology major, and I had been raised by hippies, and so I wanted everything to make sense. I didn't want anyone to be on acid anymore. And I have to admit, those people were saying what you just said, which is that invention is always going to be suspect. Inspiration is the only thing that will allow a work to breathe in any sphere. And the tap dance is going to be completely misguided and a misapprehension of that work, even if that work is science, I swear. But in music, I mean, duh. And I think it's why they so actively keep music out of the recording industry, because, I mean, I know this. They told me when I was on Warner Brothers, we don't want substance because music listeners can't be told what to love. They want to love. They already know. Their spine's been shaken up by music. They demand that. And I would say, yeah, I want someone, I don't care if one person buys the record, I want them to listen a million times. And they're like, yeah, we want a million people to listen once. It's like, yeah, therein, I don't think a music listener is going to play that game. And they say, yeah, this is why we don't want music here.
How do you think we got so off course? Because when I think of music and its origin around the campfire and, people making sounds and it was so connected to spirituality and to that channel and to that sense of belonging and community and all of that, what was that moment? Was it, I mean, it seems obvious to say, capitalism or money or realize, and I guess, yes, that's like the obvious answer. But it's almost like some rotten seed got in the bunch and grew faster than the truth.
That's real. It is easy to say, art versus commerce. But there is this ownership too. I suppose it would be ego, and that would go along with image, right? So much as everybody loves the Carter family, they went around, collecting songs and owning them and saying, we wrote this down, give us money. it's a little bit different from the sustainability model that we ask for now, which is that if this is your soundtrack, do you want more? And so, support so that there is more. But there's an attachment to identity there that implies a kind of ownership, and I don't know if that makes music live. It used to be that a song could be carried overseas and sung to children, so carried over generations, and all the different voices that sang it and shared it would sort of shave off some of its edges and then introduce other verses. Um, and the streamlining effect is not the one of like glossy production, because there were so many voices, some more idiosyncratic than others, some less about change, but it was a group effort toward a song that no one owned. And we call that public domain. So there might be something in there, even though I don't really work with songs that anyone else would want to sing.
Right. Oh, I wouldn't say that. You must have seen the Dandy Warhols episode, or at least seen the live cover where Courtney, along with his friend who he launched, Miranda Lee Richards, they sang "Your Ghost." Like it was something that he sings almost every night on tour. I think it's like
that is very cool. I love that because I don't get a lot of people covering my stuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, be careful. Now that you said that out loud, I might just do that. I'll reach out and make sure I get your blessing. That there are so many of your songs.
God love you if you want to do that. Why I've been trapped in this practice space all week with telling you this. It's just like trying to play our songs. We don't make it easy.
Yeah, you guys are getting ready to go on tour in Europe and even Australia for the next couple months. You're going to be on the road. Or this month, right? In May. Yeah, you start this month.
Yeah, we leave in a couple of days for Norway. I just got back from Australia, my second Down Under leg on the last solo album. I'm getting a little bit tired.
I think you'll be in, for those of you listening and watching, when this comes out on May 27th, they'll be in England. I know you're playing a show in the UK that day. I'm not sure if it's Bristol or...
Wow, you're good. Thank you for knowing that. I don't think I've even looked at the itinerary. I know when I get to Norway, someone is in charge of driving the van. It's not me.
Oh my gosh, it's like a dream, the idea of touring in Europe for me. It's something I plan to realize before I'm on the ground.
Cool.
So I know.
It is really an honor. I also did Southern Europe with one of my sons not too long ago. We did 2 weeks in Spain, 2 weeks in Italy, 2 weeks in Portugal, just for one leg. And just the lostness of it. I feel the honor of the music because I get to disappear and in a true room, true listening venue, that isn't about somebody going on stage. It's just supposed to facilitate the listening process, right? So that the spotlight came about for different people, the people you were just talking about. And for me, I don't do anything except focus. So the audience is there helping. And there's this hover body of song we have in the room. And in Southern Europe, it's like that doesn't stop. It's like there's like Mother Nature is running the show just a little bit more than it is here. And everywhere we went, it was just infused with color and texture and warmth. And I want to say confusion so that you couldn't leave the moment. Just everything was just a Buddhist bell. It was sort of like having my children around when I had all 4 children at once. Sometimes I didn't have very chattery children, but every now and then they'd all be talking at once. And I would think, this is perfect. This is like birds. This is the wind. I wish I could just remember all of it. And that's what this tour was like. Just like,
wow.
Everything was something so infused with aliveness that I just wanted to capture it. I couldn't carry it with me. So you have to keep going back. You should come back with that.
Well, remember that because you're going there now. So if you're getting tired and thinking like, I don't know what the itinerary, always keep in mind how wonderful it was.
Yeah.
You know,
Meeting in Stuttgart, and I'm thinking, what's my job again? Maybe I could be a milkman.
I do think Europe, I think the audiences there are so music oriented, like really about music more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's true in the States too. It's just with the venues, and I know it's happening overseas now. It's sort of like a domino effect. You know, smaller venues are closing and, you know, they're being bought up by bigger conglomerates. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's really testing, you know, the audience as much as it is the small to medium bands, you know.
That was so sad. It was hard anyway, and then
Yeah.
COVID hit
Yeah.
all of ours, and the corporate takeovers. As soon as you walk into a club, you feel the corporate presence, and you know, humans are human. There's a heart beating under every rib cage, but I
Exactly.
worked with the humans under the auspices of corporate machine, and it's a dark influence. And yeah, you're right. Domino effect is real. America's been tough, so I just keep. And I'll do America, and I love America, and I do think we have a culture that is not an economy or a popular culture. Well, you know, we're the entertainment industry country. That's our most impactful export, and there's some trickle down there.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish it had gone in the direction of like unpretentious dream. Like if we had taken old Hollywood and just followed it into "We're goofy Americans and we'll give you a dream," and you know that's great. It didn't really help the music industry, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if I can go to a place where they know drama instead of melodrama, if they know story, if they know senses, like alive senses, they're musically literate, as we all are when we're born. We just sort of let ourselves forget because it can be real bullying here. If if you think that everything needs to be a product and every person needs to be an ad for that product, and it's hard to not be that kind of weak, and it's stupid to be this kind of brave.
Off that, like, how was it that, you know, you really did come up when, for those of us who are in music now, look back on the 90s as it's still quote unquote functioning, right? Like comparatively in a system that at least had development deals, and at least, you know, there were some people in these labels that genuinely, and there still are, genuinely care about music and the
Mhm.
artist and lifting them up. And like, so there's never any completely black and white situation, but it
That's true.
sounds like you kind of unfortunately fell into a situation that you felt was pretty all white or all black, however you want to, you know, whichever
Yeah.
version was suffocating to you. How did you find that courage and that bravery to choose your own path when you had a deal and you guys were set up to be recording artists on Warner Brothers, one of the biggest, most renowned record labels of the time, and continue to be? You know, everyone that I respect. I remember when REM was signed to them, and then Flaming Lips, and this was all like what, 90s into early aughts, I think.
Yeah.
And these were bands that I thought of as more like, you know, indie rock niche,
Yeah.
but they started to really, obviously REM was stratospheric with their rise. But even Flaming Lips went from me seeing them, you know, in New Jersey with just the lights they set up themselves, and, you know,
Yeah.
wishing I had earplugs, to full stadium craziness, you know. So there's always that money grab that unfortunately enters into something that may have started with creating more ease for people to listen everywhere, or, you know, maybe the original ideas were pure, some part of it, or like the people
Yeah.
who thought of it, kind of like, who, you know, the people who made bombs, who thought, well, if we have that, then we won't use them.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, I know.
right? So I don't know what I'm getting at, except to say, like, how did you? I don't think I ever let you answer. How did you have that courage at that time? You
I
know.
think I knew when I was 12 that I didn't belong on that landscape. I mean, I know I knew that. when we only played with hardcore bands, and my heroes were probably Exene Cervenka and then Linda Berry, the cartoonist. And yet you sort of slip into this change as you feel it coming. And we played every night. We opened for everybody. I just booked us in every club every night, and we played with wonderful bands and horrible bands. And I did notice that the wonderful bands like REM, Violent Femmes, they liked us. They were like, "Do you guys have a tape or like anything we can listen to in the van?" And I was thinking, "Well, you're nuts." But I did notice that the old guard, mostly dudes, who were playing a kind of diluted impression of a genre that had ripped off somebody else a long time ago. There's just nothing left, like no seed of meaning in what they were doing. They hated us. So I thought, well, that's cool. I mean, imagine like
Yeah.
berating little girls from the stage. Like you're literally like 14 years old, and they're so threatened by change. And I have spoken with them since. Like we were inducted into the Rhode Island Hall of Fame, and as we were walking in, my drummer said, "Have you been feeling uncomfortable about this?" And I was like, "Why? Yeah, why?" And he said, "I just realized it's because they all hated us, and we had to go in and play with all these people who hated us." And they were wonderful. And they said, we thought if this is what's coming next, I'm already dead. And so, God love them. It was true. And I believed, all right, when they first started calling us alternative rock, I thought I was insulted. I thought, alternative to what? Why can't rock change? It has changed before. And so when the record company started lining up to change, I thought, okay. And the only label I would have anything to do with was this British dude who was calling our apartment. I thought he had a fake accent. I didn't really believe he had a label or anything. And I had just been telling all the labels, no, 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 this is not cool. We're not going to do this. And he said, I can't sign you. You're American. So let's talk about anything else. And at the time, I was pregnant. I didn't know it. I thought I had the flu. So I'm just stuck in the apartment, and I'm answering the phone. This fake British accent was fun to listen to. And we talked about anything, and mostly like skin diseases. And the British have unbelievable vocabulary for what could go wrong with skin. I don't know. I'm sure we have the same problems, but we don't articulate them this well. It's just like beautiful slang, verrucas, and yeah, whatever. Anyway, eventually we run out of skin problems to talk about, and he says, "All right, I'll sign you," even though I don't sign American fans. I was like, "Wait a minute, you're really British and you actually have a label?" Like I thought you were waiting for one of the cute girls to answer the phone. And so we signed just a one record deal with this British label. So our record never came out in our own country. Like a bunch of records never came out. This is how smart I am about marketing, right? So when he said they're trying to change, they're going to change for you, join them. I I was naive enough to believe it, and they weren't interested in change unless it came along with money. And they were still calling me female, and I was sort of like, well, sure, but I'm not going to make the stupid faces you want me to make at cameras, and I'm not going to wear tight clothes, and I'm not going to certainly not going to write stupid songs for you. And I, I, it got so ludicrous and so cruel, like so personally cruel. It was really, if they can't exploit you, they will target you. And they were trying to destroy my band. They were taking our song off the radio, like threatening DJs and saying to the radio stations, we're going to remove all payola. They wouldn't send our records to the record stores. And they just make it so ludicrous that you have no choice. So I'm not brave. I just, I can't do that. I can't lie. And I can't pretend that women are idiots. Like, we're not. There are human women. Most of us act human, even though we'll suffer for it. And so whose side you want to be on? I want to be on their side.
Mm. Well, good for you.
You too.
That's amazing. I mean, it's not amazing. It's just like you keep talking about the word true. And, yeah, why aren't we known as human animals, all of us? Obviously, we
Yeah.
have to qualify a little bit so we know who's who. I mean, I guess like female, male, all that. But, or do we? Like, that's one thing that I think is refreshing of this time is sort
Yeah.
of like you know, the the questioning of that. I think when it gets into too much of like, now let's have additional constant labeling of everything, then it's also moving away from the truth. Why can't we all just be people, however we
Yeah.
present, and that be okay?
It's another
Yeah.
way that we're born that we get shaken out of. And maybe it's brave to not change our minds, but I don't understand how you could possibly look away from the truth. I did try to work with them. Like, these are decent people, the photographers and the publicists. And I ended up just asking them, like, what the hell? and, and sometimes they knew what the hell. And it was never a good thing. It was always disappointing. I'd say the reason I'm not going to make that inane face at the camera is because you're asking me to come on to what all men, because we think white men have all the money, right? And they're like, yeah, yeah, that.
Wow.
I said, well, how about no? And um, they'd go, oh, okay. So smart, so lesbian.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, you know what? Whatever. They're like, you can see it. One of the reasons I don't want to do this because I'm married to someone, 4 children who are going to see me making that stupid face in the camera to sell music somehow to who? My fans would hate me if I did that. And I thought, but you know what? Whatever works. Get me out of this category.
Wow.
Because sure, it's important to me to be female, I guess, but it's none of your business. This is sound. And even the photographers would try to help, and they'd say, like, well, okay, let's put this blazer on you. And I was like, why? And they said, well, because you're smart. I said, you're sort of going to make me look like a man because you think intelligence is a masculine characteristic. And they're like, absolutely, welcome to the entertainment industry.
Wow. And the they that you're really speaking about is the major label deal that came after the one record deal with the British man who talked about skin
That's
problems
right.
with you. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. That's what I just
You
wanted to
know, I'm
clarify.
fine, knowing full well what I was signing. I didn't care that they would on the records and all that. I just wanted to make records, and I never complained that whole time. It was when they tried to destroy us because I was fighting the old guard, the old system. That's when I said, "Well, I'm out of here," and they said, "No, it doesn't work that way. We don't let you go just because you want to go." It's
Wow.
pretty dark.
Yeah. I think that's really an interesting point you make because it's if we're complacent enough and can manage to stay where we are in certain corporate structures, we'll skate by like,
Yeah.
anyone will. But the minute you question and or push back too much and you're wasting their money to do it,
Hmm.
and they realize this person is so strong-willed and so sure that they're not going to kowtow to what we're suggesting they
That's
do,
it.
then they're like, let's destroy them. Like that's the alternate of let's foster these artists and help them, but they need to, report to our bottom line and
Yes.
but if they don't, let's just destroy them on the way out. I mean, that
Oh,
mean-spirited way, I really hope that at least that part is gone, but I've only ever sadly heard a lot of horror stories. And the last thing I want to do in general is talk about, negativity or
I know. I
things.
know.
It's like, I mean, the world's got enough going for it, sadly, in a not so happy way, that, making more joy is sort of the call of our times and creating more beauty through music and
Yeah.
art, I think. And so it's not a shit talking session, but it is just, a conversation really of getting to the bottom of like, how did we how did we make such a wrong turn, all of us, to get to where what dominates is a kind of mean-spirited, money-first way in the arts, and it's
I
heartbreaking.
think it's the dehumanizing that you don't want to engage in right now, right? They think, well, bank on the lowest common denominator. Let's just assume all people are dumb, and so we're going to dumb down the product again and again and again and again. It can never be dumb enough. But if you met anybody, they all have hearts. They all have senses, and cerebral facility is not intelligence. It's full on aliveness, and that's how we're born. We know what music is when we're born. So there's no excuse for assuming that human beings are ready to be manipulated via marketing. So, but we're the lucky ones. We're the ones who are still cool. We're still laughing through, and we're still making something that doesn't insult anyone. It makes us happy. You and I are doing what we would do no matter what, right? So, like,
Yeah, and I don't know, I make a wish that, because I know, like you said, every chest has a beating heart, and even, within these corporate structures, we are dealing with human beings and people, and so I always make the wish that somehow enough people bring joy and truth and will and art to the table that changes that paradigm,
yeah,
that transforms that, and just like the audience at large, or musicians, artists don't want to be reduced to the lowest common denominator. The same should be for those behind the scenes who maybe fell into, what everyone told them, this is what you do in the industry, and so they're just following. They didn't have the will to realize, like, this isn't nice, or I want to help this artist, really. I don't want to tell them what to do. There's rare people within the industry that absolutely do that, and they are
yeah,
there, and like, kudos to that kind of strength. And
yeah. I
I
did hear from them. They wanted to help. They would say, "But I'm out of here next year. I made so much money. I'm leaving now." I'm like, awesome. But streaming didn't hurt my career, certainly. I never made a penny from any of my records. And so streaming, I figure, like Chuck D and I were the only people who were pro Napster, the only musicians. And it was because I thought we need a more musically literate populace. If there are so many people who have never even heard music, they've only heard product. It's like trying to convince someone who's only ever eaten McDonald's that an apple actually comes from a tree and could make them happier, even though it's got bruises on it and it isn't dressed up like, whole food at you, and no one is going to make money. It's difficult to describe to them what how hard music could hit them. So I am now really excited that people can listen free through time, through genre, and just explore. It's, maybe I won't see a musically literate populace come out of this American structure in my lifetime, but it's getting better. And we have a few generations of kids now who have no idea what they're listening to in the best way. Nobody told them this is too smart for you. This is too black for you. This is too female for you. It's just sound. And they're developing their own opinions, so that it will be very difficult to convince them, oh, we're going to tell you what to love now. And it's this crap. They'll be all about the apples.
Mm. I love it. I like that you brought it all back around. Well, I have to ask how music found you. I ask everyone that, and I'm so curious. How did music find you?
My parents are from Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they got married young, had me move to like Little Five Points in Georgia. It was just like hippie commune kind of stuff. Took me to Woodstock, took me to a bunch of concerts, and they had a movie camera and a movie projector, but they didn't have a movie screen, and so they would show our home movies on the side of the neighbor's house. I think without the neighbor's permission, we would sit in the grass and watch home movies with all our hippie friends. And I remember it's like a lot of footage of concerts and me riding my tricycle around like a Burger King crown and a third eye painted on my forehead. And I was upset by the sound of the projector, this like, that didn't seem to be how I should be thinking of our lives. And so, dude, my father would play guitar as a soundtrack to our lives and say, like, ignore that and listen to this, which is sort of the principle that I have lived my entire life by. And he came to realize that it would help me through anything, like full morning stomach aches. And he would just play folk songs or his own songs. And he would hide the guitar behind the living room couch. So as I grew up, I would, after school, I would open the guitar case. I wasn't allowed to touch the guitar, but technically I could open the case, I guess. And I would just stare at it for hours, and it drove him nuts. So one day when I was 9, he said, okay, I'll show you a few chords. And he taught me E major, A major, and D major. And, I was thinking keys to the goddamn kingdom here. And instead I was just pointless. Like, he said, what's wrong? And I said, well, you just taught me red, blue, and yellow. I wanted to learn tangerine and aquamarine and burgundy and ochre. And he just looked at me and said, it's yours. Play colors. And I wrote my first song that day by inventing colors that I heard as a way to turn the air into something I could hear, I suppose. And my life pictures into something that didn't hurt so much. It would hit really deep and sound like the projector. But there was this beautiful music along with it. And my first song was pretty passable, I have to say. It was called 22, and it was about acorn into oak tree and vice versa, and that kind of like living a life backwards, and probably more about music itself than my life. But I started throwing music just a few years later, and I'm still, playing in the same band, and every single day, every measure, I learned something else. So, like, once you learn that fascination, and somebody says, "Okay, you're supposed to be a Big Mac, you could be rich," you got to watch people look at you. I'm thinking, "Are you nuts?" It's like I win.
Oh my gosh. And you produce, right? You produce your records. I saw you produced Hips and Makers along with
Lenny Kaye, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Lenny Kaye.
Yeah, I produce everything. Sometimes 50-Foot Wave will work with Mudrock, who's like the noise rock Phil Spector is pretty much in the band with us. But my palette is so altered by the studio that I'm a really, really nice person, but I know the songs better than anybody. And I will try things and waste a lot of time knowing that they're not going to work because a poor producer is standing there going like, give me a clue, help. And so I just don't, I haven't worked with them in decades because it's painting. And I love the experience of, every time I go to the studio, the first day of a session, I know everywhere I want the mics placed. I know what kick drum I'm going to use. I know what reverbs I'm not going to use, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always completely wrong. Like, have you ever even heard a record before? Wrong. Just stupid wrong. And I love that because it means that what's coming through the speakers is essentially like a kid talking to you. Like I poured their cereal and put sweaters on them, and I gave them the vocab, but I wouldn't presume to tell them what to say or how to act or who to be. So what's coming through the speakers is asking me to be a mother again and back off, just listen and help it become, which is it's a very loving but invisible place to be. Whereas the producer job is more just putting your thumbprint on things, and I've had enough thumbprints.
Yeah, but you can tell that, like you said, you're the only one who sort of, you hear a song, or let me make sure to clarify. Do you hear a song fully formed when you write it, kind of like you have to execute on something you already kind of hear in the studio, or is it all free flowing when you produce? You know what I mean? Like, are you going for this? I know people who have that, like a song comes to them and they hear it done, and until it's done in the way they heard it, it's not the song.
Oh yeah, I do have that.
Okay.
Because the energetic is not sound. So
right.
It's just too hard. I could never do it perfectly, which is, I suppose, part of the fascination, because I know what I'm trying to recreate. And there is always this disappointment that hugeness is gone when you make it human. But you can grow that kid up into a superhero self. And there's a different hugeness. It's humble. It's human. It's mud wrestling, and it's crying, and it's whining, and all the things that we do are in the produced version of the song. And you have to sort of forgive yourself, because you're not trying to impress anybody. You're just trying to be real, right? Like you trying to create an atmosphere. Recording in New Orleans at Kingsway, there's this mic up at the top of the grand staircase, and we would call that him, meaning like he's got his own impression of things, and he's going to bring his selfhood to this room. Let's like bring him into the mix. And that's when I realized atmosphere can come from anything. I started recording like Australian birds when I was on tour and laying them into my records. You can't exactly hear them, but it's what I needed. There is no other word but atmosphere. It's like creating a universe in that moment. And, obviously my engineer is like really sick of birds right now. I think they're cool. The whistling ducks in New Orleans that don't whistle, they scream, and there are thousands of them. And my poor engineer is like, no more goddamn birds, Chris. But I have enough layers of birds. And I record in a horse stable, so there are these horses like, and that doesn't, I don't know if you've ever been in front of a horse when it whinnies, but it doesn't sound like whinny. It sounds like boom, like an explosion, a big barrel chest, sort of like a distorted cello. I got a bunch of them on my records too for the headphone kids.
Maybe you're like searching with the birds. You're searching for that moment you talked about with having a cacophony of children, talking at the same time. You're like searching. You're like, I want that back.
Yeah. I have a record called Wyatt at the Coyote Palace. They said Wyatt, who you're about to meet, and it begins with my kids and I walking through the snow and Canada geese overhead, and the chattering children and the chattering geese sort of blend.
Wow.
So yes, right.
Wow. Well, what a perfect segue to bring Wyatt into this conversation. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, let's bring him in. Thank you so much for your time and your words and your heart.
Thank you, beautiful. What a treat.
So fun. The artist is Wallace False, but we're speaking with Wyatt True.
That's right.
AKA.
You can mix and match as you like.
Love it. It's so nice to meet you. Kristin and I have just been having a very wonderful conversation, and we wanted to include you in it and see what you're up to, and have you share a little bit with us about your music or anything you'd like to share. I don't care what you share.
Dear God, that's so open-ended. I'm having an existential crisis.
Should I ask you a specific question, maybe?
Yeah, only yes or no questions. I answer with ones and zeros.
That's very modern. That's very now.
He won't say this, but he's been profiled in the LA Times and by NPR. And I did not believe in the artistic personality until I met him. In fact, having done interviews since I was 14, I argued against it vehemently, saying we should all be focused on clarity, not, the mental illness problem and the fact that we have eyes pointing in different directions and all that. And
now it's my turn to argue against that.
Yeah. I met
right. And then who's next after me? Like, I have houseplants and that's it.
So then go ahead, argue against that. You'll have the final say.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Buck stops here.
You started out with animating, right? Did that come first?
Yeah, yeah. I was programming and I was animating. I was just building weird little things that moved when you push buttons, and these like I would build a character and then I'd program it so that you could walk around and then like I'd be like, well, I'll have him walk around the woods, but that's getting boring, so I'm going to make it snow. I'm going to write a couple of lines of code and now it's going to snow in there. You know? And then what I realized is with animation, it's like that it takes so much time. And like so now I moved to writing because you can sort of you can just tell people what to imagine. It's so you make them do the work for you. It's very efficient.
Mm. Well, I like it. I like how you explain that. I think too with music, when I think of music versus, let's say, film or anything that is wonderfully collaborative, you can do it alone in your room. Like
Yeah.
music is something you
Yeah.
can make from, a song from start to finish, and you don't need to have 100 other people corroborate that story or tell that story with you. And
Yeah,
so
thank
that's very
goodness for that.
satisfying. There's like a sense of closure, like when you actually are like, that song is done. Wow. And I did that. But also at a certain point, then, like we were talking about before, you take it into the studio, you have engineers, you have musicians, then that's the whole fun collaborative piece. But there is something to be said about that sense of accomplishment, which as an art form, I think music does give you that satisfaction.
Truly. Yeah. And I think it's for me, I've just been kind of chasing this sense of complete originality, the sense of like I don't want any currents to be bleeding into my art. Other people aren't like that. They'll tell you all day about festive drums and how the place where they're from informed them and how their family informed them and all that stuff. Yeah, I hope they have fun. That's all I can say. But the music, it's like I won't even use synthesizers because I don't want to use other people's sounds. They got their little grubby hands on them. It's like I want to create something that's just entirely its own. I
And
think my mom's pretty similar, actually.
I
Yeah,
know,
I hear something I've never heard before.
Yeah.
Festive drums.
I know. I like that too.
Right, yeah, because some people, they're very plugged into the global zeitgeist. Now, I think it's subjective, how you feel about that, but it makes my stomach turn a little bit. Like I listen to world music, I'm like, ew, this sounds like humans. It's like, okay, I'm glad you're having fun being humans, but ew.
So how would you describe your music then in that sense?
Well, what I do is I'm a control freak. I build things from the ground up. I take raw things like, I'm sure you know about like a sine tone is really it's basically the most basic form of sound you can get. It's really just a wave going like, ooh. And if you look at it mathematically, it's called a sine tone because if you look at a unit circle and you have a line kind of rotating all the way through it, and you follow the sign of the triangles that it's kind of drawing in this path. You follow that, you chart out its little trajectory. That makes a sine tone, right? So it's very simple. It's this little mathematical concept. And there's a square tone. It's just a tone that goes in zigzags, right? And then I kind of manipulate it from there. Now the problem is, I'm sure I'm sure ultimately I'm collaging. I'm sure ultimately I'm borrowing from all sorts of things and moved by all sorts of things. I'm sure I got positive influences, negative influences. You can't escape the lineage. I've written stories on just that specifically.
Hmm. So what kind of instrumentation then are you manipulating? Let's say you push a piano key and then
Oh well, for
or
one thing,
how are you getting your sounds?
Oh well, the sounds they can easily come public domain. You find
Hmm.
there's a whole bunch of archives that'll have just sine tone, just a sine wave, just a saw wave, something like that. In addition to that, I have a pretty crappy. Can I say that word? Is that okay? Okay, good. I have a pretty crappy thrift store guitar. Some metal guy owned it before me, and he like did this thing where he scooped out the frets, and so and so apparently no one likes that. No one likes scooped guitars, but I do. There's rust on the strings. I'm sure I'm using the wrong kind of reverb. It'll make people angry. I'm not playing, blues riffs and bar riffs. But I always say it's kind of like this. People don't fight the guitar enough the way they play it. They're always playing open chords. They're playing traditional chord shapes. They look up online. Okay, what's the shape of this chord? Like you can play whatever you want on the guitar. It's just a wooden board that makes notes. You can play whatever you like, and you can play them however you like. You can fudge the notes. You can mute the notes. You can bend them. You can there's so much you can do, and there's no point in just questing for originality. It's not about that. You quest for something that gets the electrochemistry of your reward circuitry moving, and maybe you'll do that for someone else.
That's true.
Wow.
Good boy.
Yeah, the apple does not fall far from the tree. We were talking about apples earlier, and it's like, wow, second generation of the kind of strong-willed courage to reinvent and or just question what we call reality musically or artistically, which is so refreshing. And I could talk to you guys for hours because it's like makes my heart sing, because it's so not the dominant conversation.
Yeah, that's probably part of the point. Our parameters are a little bit different, aren't they?
Yeah, it's true. Well, you happen to know that evolutionary psychologists are looking at a pretty interesting theory that reality as we know it is fake. And when I heard of that, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness.
I knew it.
That's a big relief.
I'm going to mess with this guitar. These frets are stupid.
Hey, thank God. Oh, I was so sick of time and space, man.
Do you build instruments too, baby?
Do I build instruments? I mean, I wouldn't trust myself with the power drill if that's what you mean.
No, I don't want you drilling anything. No. When I can't find anything that I haven't heard before, I start making Frankenstein stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, thought so.
You gotta, and one of the ways you can do that is you can double sounds. So like you can take for example, play staccato guitar, speed it up, do 30-second notes, that kind of thing,
yeah.
And then you can double that with I don't know, let's say a flute or spit up piano notes or a pigeon or something like that, and and then you kind of create something that's kind of uncanny.
I learned to sing like a star. I did that, just layering all these different instruments, and then I thought, oh, I'm gonna freak people out, so I sort of toned it down, and no one ever noticed any of it. So my advice to you would be just like up the pigeon level
if you want. Yeah, but the thing is, if you get people used to you freaking them out, they're gonna come to you, and then you just become like a really weird jukebox. You don't want to be there. They're just gonna push a button, and then you're gonna be freaking. You're gonna be like, "Hey, make us feel weird." I'm like, "Come on,
more pigeon."
Yeah, to me that just sounds like something I also think is really valuable in music is not getting comfortable. Like, oh, this is my lane. I do weird stuff.
Yeah.
Right? But that you're even questioning that. Like, okay, this is what I feel impassioned to do. It's making my molecules, my cells fire, whatever it is, my, synapse fire. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. And then maybe like tomorrow it's, a beautiful piano song might do that for you. You're saying like, I'm not like I'm not going to just become that person that people go, oh, I go to him for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will gladly write slow jams or 80s pop if that's what gets my brain moving.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not like that. It's frog sounds and rusted guitars.
I love it.
Well, I just think it's kind of fun. I want to say the F word.
Oh yeah.
Like, concessions is fun, and I had to not be afraid to just sound fun for a minute. Because I can totally be accused of having lost my edge that I never wanted in the first place. But yeah, this record is just very sweet, very fun, very simple, and that set me aflame. I had all of these other overdubs on. I just was like, nope, scatter, y'all. Bring it back to the pigeon. I forgot it was supposed to be about the pigeon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because the thing is, like, it's already going to be crowded in your head. We're social creatures, and so we have a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, if you get the audience out of your headspace, you're going to realize there's still at least somebody there, and that somebody, That's the other. You're creating it for, people have hallucinated the muse throughout history. You read Lacan, he talks about the big other. You're creating for somebody, and that somebody's never. It's somebody's always a projection, even if it's an audience. So get them all out of your head, except for that one person who's just like watching you be weird.
Going, yay!
I don't know why I imagine them in a party hat.
If it serves us, we can just go into the React chat here and, put hearts and party hats. And here, I'll do it right now. Here's my clapping hands. You see it up there?
Hey, very nice. That's very validating.
To keep each other on in the studio. Hey!
Exactly. Well, so what's next for you, Wyatt? Are you releasing something soon that we can get our ears on?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just released something. It's called Signal. It's a bunch of these little kind of strange industrial soundtracky pieces. It's on Bandcamp if you want it. It's free of charge. I don't want to hurt the people's feelings, but I feel like it's kind of silly charging people for music. But yeah, they can just download it. They can remix it. They can tell me they hate it. It's all good. And I'm also writing. I wrote a short story called The Fortune Letters, which is pretty pertinent to this conversation. That can be found on Medium. I think we included a link, didn't we?
Yeah, I'll make sure to include that in the YouTube.
Sure.
For this as well. We'll include all your work there.
If you want.
Yeah, or not, whatever.
Right.
No, we will. That's the whole point of the show is like, music discovery, art discovery through voices that really did it their way and built a kind of legacy. And Kristin, you are one of those people to me, most certainly. And since it's my show, that's how it is. So,
yeah, and I'm putting my party hat on for you because I'm grateful to you for doing what you do. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you, and I'm excited to deep dive into your work, Wyatt.
Sure. Be careful.
Thank you both so much for taking the time and being on LaunchLeft podcast.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share, or shall we sign off?
No. Peace out.
Peace out.
Woo! Have a great tour, Kristin. Go see Kristin on tour.
Thank you.
All right. See y'all soon. Thank you. Bye.
LaunchLeft aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. LaunchLeft begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.